In this BlocksCAD tutorial, we're going to make something that looks like a wastebasket, right? So we have a few things we can control. One thing is the wastebasket size. We can make that bigger, so I'll make it 60. We also could increase the height and the thickness if we wanted to. I'll make the thickness equal to 1. We also can control the number of holes in there. So I'll make them less holes and a little bigger. So let's make them 2. So now if we go and re-render, this takes a moment or two. Well, actually it didn't take too long. So you see, we have less holes in there. I think it's higher, right? Let me look at the height again. Let's make the higher about 200. That should be different, right? So let's try this. Okay, so yes, it looks like it's working. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to make the cylinder first. So for the cylinder, we need the radius. And we'll set that to, I guess, 60 or something like that, right? Then we need the height of the cylinder. And we can set that to whatever we like. I guess 100's okay. And then we need the thickness. So the thickness could be, something small like 4. Okay, now we need the 2 cylinders. So we'll get the cylinder and we'll put in the variables, right, into the correct slots for that object, right? And now the second cylinder will be a little smaller because it will cut the first one, right? So we need to do a little formula here. We need to say the second cylinder will be radius minus the thickness, right? And the height is still the same. We also need to raise this a little bit because we don't want the bottom to be cut. So we'll raise this one up by 2. That means the one that's cutting. Let's put them together in a Boolean difference and see what we have. Okay, so there's the cylinder. So now we need a few variables for those blocks that are going to cut up the cylinder. So the first thing we need is the length of the block, and that will have to be long enough to cut the cylinder, so we'll make it equal to 3 times the radius, right? The next thing is the number of those blocks or holes, and we could just make that into a number. And the last thing is the size of each hole, and we'll make that equal to the angle, and we'll make between the holes, and we'll make that equal to 360 divided by the radius. I'm going to add one more variable here, and that is the size of the hole, right? The size of the block. Make that equal to like 2. Okay, so let's make some blocks now. We need a loop, and the loop is going to go from 1 to the number of holes, right? And we need to rotate each one a certain amount. So let's get a formula for this. It'll be, the formula will be the I times the angle. So the angle of rotation will be different for every cube. Let's make the cube. Add the variables for the cube. We want this to be the length and xy to be the hole. So if we run this, looks like made a little mistake here. So let's go check. The first thing is this needs to be a times, right? I times the angle, and this needs to be 360 divided by the holes. Okay, so now looks like we're getting what we want. And I just want to disable the cylinder and just to see what I have here. Okay, so that was pretty good. So now that we have one of those, we need to make a few more of them. So we'll do a Z loop, and the Z loop will go from 1 to the stack. we need to transform each of those stacks up, and the formula will be, well, we have to get a z variable here, and the formula will be z times the the okay, it should be z times whole plus the gap, right? Okay, I'm going to change this misspelled word length and spell it properly. So let me go up and change that. So I have to change it here too. Okay, so now we have, and let's run it. Looks like we only have 2 here. We needed a few more. So let's check a few things, right? So the first thing is the whole. This has to be whole, not holes, right? And the same thing over there, whole. Yeah. And the height. So height has to be divided by the holes and the h gap. Okay. And in here, the same thing. That needs to be z times whole plus the gap. Okay, so let's run this and check it out. So we have generated a stack of these. So let's wrap this up. We're going to enable the 2 cylinders. We're going to add a new slot for the minus. So the blocks will be cutting that cylinder up, and let's render. So we see we have our holes, right? If we change a couple of things, right, let's give it out a try. We'll increase, let's add some color to this whole thing, right? And then maybe change some variables. So we'll increase the radius, increase the height, maybe increase the size of the hole, right? And let's see what we generate. So looks like the radius and the height has been altered. Let's make the holes a little bigger. So I'm going to go and make that equal to 5. So as you see, it's all generated with variables.